Okay. It says your opponent told the Yakima Herald he is willing to raise taxes to pay for schools and that he is for Common Core. Do you believe the same? And if not, what is your opinion on Common Core and how to fund schooling? Okay, first and foremost, I come from an education family. My father's a teacher, my mother-in-law's a teacher, my sister's a teacher, my mother is a school secretary, my father-in-law is maintenance and mechanics. We know the schools inside out. I'm also a homeschool mom. So, I hate Common Core. It's awful. We can talk about standards all we want. Standards are good. Standards say this is where we should be. But standards also understand that not everyone comes to that same level. This is something we know in homeschool, and this is one of the reasons that homeschool is so successful. We've got a kid that's great at art. We're not going to teach her calculus. You've got a kid that's great at science. Why are you forcing them to be a sports star? Teach to the student. Teach to what their natural talents are, and then bring some of those other subjects alongside when they don't realize they're getting it. Okay? Common Core doesn't do that. Common Core treats every student the same. And let me remind you, Common Core is not new. This is the same program we have been developing in Washington State since the 1950s. It just keeps getting a different name and morphing into something else. The people that have been pushing this in Washington State for 60 years are some of the same people that were involved in developing Common Core, which is not necessarily a federal program, but it's being forced through with federal strings. If the school districts do not take the Common Core and use it, their monies in the Race to the Top program that helps fund things in the local schools is cut. So if they don't play by the Common Core game, they don't get funding. Okay? This is being promoted as a federal program. So don't be fooled by all of that. Common Core does have an agenda. You can watch how it's being promoted. It was not put together by people who understand children. Kids at second grade level are being asked to process conceptually things that you can't process until about the fifth grade level for the average child. Common Core is bad. It is bad news. So, number one, I would like to get rid of that altogether. But raising taxes to pay for schools. Like Clint, I have also pledged that I'm not going to raise taxes. The reason is because I understand that we already have so much money going into these programs that's being used inefficiently, okay? As a homeschool mom, my daughter, she's turning 15 here in about a month. Her entire career, from birth up, not even just from kindergarten up, from birth up, may have cost me $6,000 to $7,000. Annually, each student in our public schools is costing us $6,000 to $7,000. We can make this more efficient. We have private schools and homeschools and charter schools and all of these other ideas where some of these things are being tested and we're finding ways to be more efficient. But we're not putting them back into the public schools. And in fact, our state superintendent of public schools has pledged to do everything he can to stop homeschools and private schools and charter schools. We need to be able to change these systems, make them more efficient, use the money where it needs to go, where it's not currently going. And that's one of the reasons why I don't want to raise taxes. We have enough money going there. We just need to use it better. So, no, I don't intend to raise taxes to pay for schools. The other angle on this, and I talk about this a lot, coming out of Utah is something called the transfer of public lands. This is done by the American Lands Council. As each state became a state, they granted some of their lands to the federal government to hold in trust until there was enough population to manage those lands themselves. Twice over the history of the American country, those lands have been given back to those states to use to fund their services, their schools, all of those government functions. It has never been done in the West. That's why we have Nevada. Is it Nevada or Arizona that's 90% federally owned? Washington State is 30% federally owned. And if we can go in and force the federal government to give us those lands back, number one, in Washington State, our Constitution says that those lands are to be paying for our schools. So number one, that's going to help with the McCleary decision, this huge thing that came down from the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court, that was clearly unconstitutional. But that should start taking care of some of the funding that's being required under those rules. But it's also going to give us management of our lands back, and that can come under another question. But the point being, I think the transfer of public lands, if we can get that accomplished, working together with the other Western states, that will begin to provide some of the funding that we're looking for at the state level.